And he hasn't even been paid $1 for Superboy. And that's really the breaking point for him. He tries to work it out, but he can't. So in 47, he becomes the first American writer to sue his publisher. And it doesn't go well for him. He does get some money on Superboy, but he does not get back the rights to Superman. And worse, they fire him from his own character. And if anything could be worse than that, it's this. They remove Jerry and Joe's names from the strip. You know, before that, Superman, whoever did it, it said Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Not anymore. They were erased.
Hello, everyone. I'm here today with William Bernhardt, a man I have to thank because he has allowed me to go to his WriterCon in Oklahoma next month. So thank you. Okay, so there's just so much that I found when I started researching you. What an interesting
Uh-oh.
career you have.
This
What an
sounds dangerous.
there you go. What an
Am I
interesting
going to be able to let my mom listen to this or what?
That's all in your hands.
Okay.
Um, yeah, you've had such an interesting career. Legal, you're a lawyer, you're an author, you're a mentor, you do nonfiction,
Hmm.
fiction. What I was,
Yeah,
right? What I was really interested in is how you were actually an author who started traditionally.
right.
Yeah, with the Ben Kincaid series and quite popular, and then you chose to go indie.
Well, I've gone back and forth. This new book is with a traditional publisher too, the Superman Wars, but you have to decide what's right for the book.
Okay.
You're right. I did many, I don't know, 30 or so books at Random House, Ballantine, and that was great fun. Although there came time when although I was grateful for the success those books had had, I was a little tired of doing the courtroom dramas and ready for a change of pace. I would come back to it later, but after 10 years or whatever off, it seemed new and fresh and fun again. And it was kind of a new world, and I could tell new stories. And that was fun. What really caused me to pivot toward the indie books was for a series of books I've done on writing, the so-called Red Sneaker series of books, and there are 10 of them. And I won't give you the whole story of how these came to be, but basically, I was teaching a class at a local college, a community service thing, and I thought, God, am I really credible here? But of course, if you want to be credible as a speaker, you've got to have a book, right? And
This
so,
is true.
so I wrote what was basically an extended version of several lectures and turned it into a book and took it to the next class, and everybody wanted one. And I thought, well, this is a good idea. And so I uploaded it to Amazon. And then my wife, Laura, who's also a writer, had been recording audiobooks. So we had this whole whisper room, they call it, a sound studio at home, basically, where you can record high quality stuff. And I thought, well, these are basically just expanded lectures. I should try that. And so I recorded one of the Red Sneaker books, and it was more successful than the print book. I mean, the audiobooks did very well for many years. I think in part because they're relatively short, the price was relatively low. And so they seemed attractive to, impulse buyers. Just, oh, I'll take that one and that one and that one. And,
Oh,
and
wow.
so I did a bunch of them. And so that was a very happy experience. You just got to know what you want out of a particular book. In the case of this most recent nonfiction, like you mentioned, I thought this is an important story. It involves Superman, and everybody know who that is. But more to the point, it's about what I think is the most important, most pivotal creator rights battle of modern times. I mean, Jerry Siegel's struggle has benefited a lot of creatives, not just in the comic book world afterward. And to me, that was an important story, and I wanted it to have a wide audience. So I thought it was time to look for a traditional publisher. I wanted to get into the bookstores.
So I had no idea, actually. Isn't that something? Once I started
Mhm.
researching this book, I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that this rights battle existed. And
Yeah,
I
for
wonder how
about
many people
70
are like
years.
me.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's something sometimes people remember. There was a huge PR campaign for the two creators of Superman, Jerry Siegel, who was the writer who came up with it, and Joe Shuster in 75. And occasionally we'd bump into people, as old as I am, who would remember that and thought, oh, I already know that story. And I kept saying, you so don't. There's so much more to it. There's 50 more years of squabbling after that. But yeah, what I found over and over again is for people, the people, even in the comic books world, don't really know the story. And the narrative that some people have been putting out, some corporate people have been putting out, is not accurate. So I wanted to tell the real story the way it happened.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, we're definitely going to have to put a link in the notes for people where they can find this because I actually, in sort of some of my circles, there's some huge Superman fans, especially
Yeah.
through, yeah. The
Well,
Superstars
plus
writing
it's
retreat, like there's a bunch of like avid Superman is like an icon within
really,
that. Yes.
well,
Like
he's
they wear
super, I
Superman
guess. So.
t-shirts at the conference and I'm like,
Well,
oh
they
my
need to
goodness.
invite me. Yeah, well, it's obviously popular with people who are interested in it like that, but to me, it's also a cautionary tale, you know. It's very much about you know, don't let what happened to Jerry Siegel happen to you. Protect yourself because the threats today may look differently, but the vultures are still out there. There's still a lot of people and companies that would be more than happy to appropriate your IP. And it does happen. You mentioned WriterCon. This is the 19th annual WriterCon, and we have smaller programs throughout the year too. And I'm telling you, every year I get someone who shows up not happy because they've blown $15,000 on a vanity press getting their
Oh,
book
yes.
published. And that still goes on all the time, or they may call it a marketing fee or whatever. But look, if somebody wants money from you,
It's wrong.
run. That's
That's
not the way
right.
publishing is supposed to work. Ditto for agents, that's not the way it's supposed to work. Or now we have all these AI scams. You probably get them in your inbox every morning. I know
Constant.
I do. And they're very convincing because of course the AI program has scraped my book or scraped an interview like this one, so they know what they're talking about, but it's a total scam. You probably read about the Anthropic lawsuit, which has now reached a settlement phase. Uh,
Yes. Yes,
I mean,
I have a book that's on that list, so I've got
well,
my name in.
fingers crossed, but you probably also know a lot of people didn't get on the list or aren't going to participate in the settlement because their publisher failed to copyright the book or didn't
Oh,
get them a Library of Congress number. So
oh,
they're shut out. People, don't count on somebody else to do important stuff for you. Either make sure they do it or do it yourself. You can. There's no reason not to. And
oh,
that's
that's
just a
interesting.
shame. Man, I don't like any of this AI scraping other people's work without right, but to give credit where it due, at least this company has set up a significant fund to try and compensate somewhat for what they did wrong, but not everybody's going to be able to participate. And those that do participate split the payment with their publisher, which is also kind of a thorn in the side.
Oh my
Because I think,
goodness.
props to publishers when they do their job, but they didn't write that book. I
No.
did.
Isn't that something? So I
And
find
they
this
don't have the
very,
copyright. I do. So why are they getting half? I don't get it,
they
but
shouldn't.
whatever.
So
Yeah.
this is what's interesting is as I'm at a different stage, right? Obviously, you have this extensive long career, and I'm still scrambling to learn. I'm hoping to
Hmm.
put my first. I have some anthologies out, but I'm hoping to put my first books out. I did have an agent. I went through the whole on sub, and my very first book died on submission. Like she didn't manage to sell it. And then once you start looking into the rights, though, I can't believe that if a publisher buys your series. And then if it's not selling, you could never write a book again in that world if you don't get your rights back. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and when are you going to get your rights back these days? I mean,
Never,
traditionally, you get the rights back when the book goes out of print. When's an ebook go out of print?
never.
Never. For that matter, even print books don't go out of print anymore unless the publisher wants them to, because, there's print on demand. In the case of Random House, they have a huge warehouse in Upper New York. They're never going to fill. So they can always print another 100 copies just to make sure they hang on to all their rights, because that's what corporations do. They get rights and they hang on to them just in case they become valuable someday. So another thing I emphasize at WriterCon every year, don't sign anything like Jerry Siegel did, unfortunately. Don't you sign anything unless it's been vetted by a lawyer or some extremely experienced industry professional, and make sure you know what you're giving up. Make sure you're getting something in return. If you're giving up these rights, probably forever licensing rights to publish, then make sure you're getting what you want in return.
Absolutely. I mean, there's
It's
so
too
many
bad
bad
about
contracts
the
out there.
the
I've signed a
book that
few
wouldn't.
bad ones.
Yeah, well, a different book than the one that didn't get picked
Yes.
up.
Yes, I have all my rights back for that. More the short story. So I've been in the short story world since 2018. I've got like 130 or 40 published. I've done pretty well with short stories, but obviously I'm never going to become a full-time author on short stories,
Right.
right? Like
I mean,
that's,
they take about as long to write as a novel, and then you got nowhere to go with them. So
well, I'm trying to string them together into novels right now. But
that's
anyway,
clever. That could work. Work for Hugh
I've got,
Howey, right?
I've got about 100 different strategies, right? But I have signed a few contracts that were dodgy, like giving away your rights forever. And then you're like,
Mm,
and that's before I knew. Now I have like lawyer friends read them, or at
good.
least read them very carefully myself. I mean, it's different for a short story though, right? Because I think my first novel, what, 2 years to write? And then now I'm trying to
Yeah.
get faster, obviously. But it's a short story is a different world, but still,
Yeah.
it's been a good place to cut your teeth. So I'm learning there's so many pitfalls for authors. I had
Yeah.
no idea that it's basically like it's like a, a, a landscape full of mines, and we have to learn how to navigate amongst them to
Right. Well,
eventually hope to get success at the other end.
yeah, this is literally why WriterCon exists, because, of course, we have craft classes on writing and marketing and pitching and publishing and all that, but I always handle the opening ceremony. My main, which is brief, but my main theme is look around you, meet someone, make friends. I know you're all writers, so you're probably introverts and would rather be at the library, but force yourself, because there's going to be a time when you need another head or another set of eyes in this deal. You need a critique group or a beta reader, or you just want to ask someone a question about this weird email that you got this morning, or this article you read, or do you like this agent? You just need to meet people. I don't even really thinking of it as networking. It's just making writer friends. And I understand people are, kind of reserved. I am too, but I always say, this is your tribe. These are the people who feel the same way you do and have the same set of values and priorities. And so make friends. You might make friends that you keep for a very long time, and you're certain to get some valuable information because we have such good people coming, writers and agents and publishers. Are you looking for an agent now, or have you got an agent, you just need to sell the book?
Well, I'm thinking I'm going to try a little toss my hat into the indie ring right now because even though I
Why
loved
that?
my agent was a lovely human and it wasn't like my experience was bad with her, but the timeline is too long. I wrote that book in November 2023, and even if the last person she pitched it to had bought it, it's what
Hmm.
is it? It's a 2-year publishing
On
cycle.
average, yeah.
That's a long
It can be
time.
done more quickly. Some people are a little quicker now if they want to be. Probably not the big five, but other publishers might get it out more quickly.
The model's shifting, that traditional publishers are now waiting to see what's blowing up in indie and then offering the deals.
Well, that's true. Was it last week? Simon and Schuster announced that they're opening in the UK yet another separate imprint, and they're looking for successful indie authors. So basically, after you've done all the work and you've built an audience, then they're interested. I mean, I don't know what they could offer you at that point would be of interest. Maybe, print rights to get into bookstores more frequently, but not and they're not the only publisher who has set up, but it's always a separate print. You know, it's like
Right.
we're going to take the gravy, but we're going to segregate you off into this separate camp from our real New York authors. And I don't know, something about it rubs me the whole way. But I
Mm.
get it. Big, you know, the big five are still doing very well financially, but there is a sense that their days are numbered, that their influence over the publishing market is not what it used to be. Still important to be sure, but maybe not what it used to be, and maybe on the decline. Because if people can not only publish themselves and do it successfully, why do we need the middleman?
Well, that's,
I want to
yeah.
emphasize to your audience that not everybody who self-publishes a book becomes a millionaire. Far from it. Most
Yes.
don't make any money at all. To be successful, you've not only got to write a really good book, you've got to market and market and market and be really savvy and be pretty constant about it.
This is so, I'm going to loop back to you talking about your nonfiction books and how you
Okay.
were able to do so much with them because of word count. But what was the word count? What is the average word count of your, because you said it was easy to
I'm
put
not
into
sure what you
audio.
mean.
You told me that your
Oh, you're
nonfiction,
talking about the books on writing?
yes. What was
Yeah,
the
they're
word
all
count of
short.
those?
They're like this.
Like, like,
See, they're thin. So
right.
even when I would record the audiobook, that would be maybe 3 hours. And the price of an audiobook, at least at Audible, is usually based on its length. So at that time, it seems to me that a 3 hour audiobook would be about $8. And that seems like a bargain to a lot of people. And they'll download it to their phones and listen to it during their commute and maybe listen to it all over and over again. I've met people who said, "Oh, I recognized your voice because I've listened to these audiobooks so much." And for a while, Audible was doing promotions for a while. They'd put all of them on a page and give you a discount if you bought them all. So it worked really well.
Oh, that's so cool. And then your
Whether that
books.
would happen today, I don't know. There's a lot more competition today, of course, than there was now. But even indie authors sometimes struggle to get a good audiobook because producing it the old-fashioned way, not everybody's got a whisper room in their home and they're expensive to set up, and not everybody is prepared to do that.
It's interesting to navigate. So I want to know why you began your writer con. Like what
Mhm.
spurred you to create Oklahoma's writer
Well,
con?
I mean, I am aware that I've been extremely fortunate. I always wanted to be a writer, like when I was 7,
Wow.
and now I am. And you know, my first book was published in 91, which seems like an eternity ago, but that's why this is my 67th book, The Superman Wars. It's because I didn't start yesterday, and I've been working consistently ever since. Anyway, the point is I've been very fortunate, and I'm well aware of it, that this punk kid from a smallish Oklahoma town who talked about wanting to be a writer, usually to skepticism, big time. And now I am, and I've been successful, and I've been able to support my family and stay home when my kids were growing up, and you know, that kind of stuff. There's really no way you can put a price tag on. So, anyway, WriterCon is kind of my way of giving back and trying to make it a little easier maybe for the next generation of writers to achieve their dreams, just like I've managed to do.
Oh, very good. And your wife is a writer too, right? The two of
Yeah,
you
she's a
are.
fine writer, very good. Has several books in print. Go read Shadow of the Taj. It's a terrific novel.
Oh, interesting. Yes, I'll link to that one as well.
Okay.
Um, and one thing I wanted to ask, especially with the success of your Ben Kincaid series, are there any options in dusty drawers somewhere? Or I was wondering how come I haven't seen anything on TV or film yet?
Yeah, good question. Of course, you know how that goes. Many are called, few are chosen. Ben gets optioned all the time, but he's never made it to the screen yet. There's no way of knowing. I did, this is a novel, but it was also historically based, a book called Nemesis, which is about Eliot Ness and his actual historical battle against what was basically America's first real serial killer, the Cleveland torso murderer, who was never, at least officially, caught. And I wrote a book about that, which did pretty well, and that's been optioned repeatedly. It came this close. Of course,
Oh.
everybody has a story like that. It even got to the point where NBC was going to do it as a mini series. They twice commissioned scripts from a first A-list scriptwriter. The scripts were good, And then after the and the second script wasn't because they disliked the first one. They did like it. They just thought, oh, well, maybe this could be 8 hours instead of six. And so they got a new script. And then they pulled the rug out of not only that, but their whole slate of specials and miniseries for the year. I think they hadn't had a very good year with that kind of thing. So they just cleaned the slate. And so after they had spent a ridiculous amount of money, they killed the whole thing. But that's just the way it goes in Hollywood. I try not to even, think about it too much because it's literally something over which the author has no control. You can
Right.
do everything right, be just as agreeable as possible, but it's still a decision that's going to be made by other people.
Right. So I guess the only good thing is that must be a good influx of money though, right? Optioning money is supposed to be fairly lucrative, correct?
Oh, it depends. If your option up front is usually what I at least would call small. Now, if the thing actually goes into production, then some real money starts happening. But the upfront is usually not gigantic.
Can you give, I actually don't know what that number, what kind of
I
average,
really can't give a range because I kind of think it depends on your book and how well it's done and how much people want it. The
right.
only time you read about this sort of thing in the press is when there's been some big bidding war, which happens very infrequently these days. But
Okay.
something like that can get the price boosted. But even that, you don't hear about this very much anymore. Just like you used to see articles about so and so author got this 7 digit or even 8 digit contract. Mary Higgins Clark gets 30 million for her next 5 books. You never read those articles anymore. And in fact, just yesterday there was an article about, I guess I won't say his name, but he's a very well-known indie author who had a 7 digit deal with somebody for his next books, and then it fell through. They just don't have that kind of money to throw around anymore, is the
Right.
reality. Even, there are a handful of what we call legacy authors, which basically means they made it big before the world went digital, before it all became ebooks and Amazon and whatnot. James Patterson, Stephen King, John Grisham, a handful of others. But that's obviously a rare breed that is not getting any bigger. The people who are making success stories today are doing it online with digital books and things like that. I mean, I know people who are making $1 million a year writing ebook, but it's usually romance books, and that's all they do is write, because they've got to generate basically a new novel every month. And they may or may not edit their work. They may get somebody else to do it. They're certainly hiring people to do marketing, but that's the kind of relentless repetition that is
Right.
required to build that kind of a career.
And then I think that, I don't know, for me, I think the burnout must be like remarkably high at that level. And then where's the joy? Doesn't it just become a
I
job?
would think so. I mean, I don't want to speak for other people, but I don't. When I did the Daniel Pike series, I did commit to what I considered a pretty fast schedule, but it wasn't a book a month. I don't know how you can do that and maintain quality. You must just have to work longer hours or something. I don't know.
So what was your release schedule with Daniel Pike?
The first one came out, I think, about 5 or 6 months apart, which to me is darn fast,
Did it?
but
Yes.
it's doable. It's fast, but it's not impossible. I still have time to do as many drafts as I like to do and send it out to friends and get it polished upright. It's obviously can't be 200,000 words. But nobody really wants that, I think, in a popular fiction novel today anyway. You just need to tell a good story.
So what would that be? Like 2,000 words a day? What would
That
your
I write, or so I really have no idea. I've never tried to track it, but the thing I always preach to people is try and make yourself write on a regular schedule. Every day is best. It may not be possible when you've got a day job or you're raising kids or whatever, but find some schedule that you can keep to and just stick to it. Write every day, even if it's only for an hour or two, which obviously longer is better, but if you can generate, like you were saying, a few thousand words a day, 2,000 words a day, you could have a finished novel first draft of a novel in maybe 4 or 5 months. And you may think it's terrible, but that's okay. Everybody thinks their first draft is terrible, including me. You go back and start fixing it, and you revise until you've got it where you want. But if you write every day, that's going to happen more quickly. Plus, you'll find it a little bit easier to write. It's never going to be easy to write. Writing is not easy, bottom line. But when you're doing it on a consistent basis, the book kind of stays in your head, you know? Your subconscious can be working on it even when you're not and will, which is why ideas come to you when you're in the shower or you're driving or some quiet time, you know, and you didn't realize you were thinking about it, but you were and working out the problems. So next day, when you sit down to write, you don't have to spend an hour staring out the window. You're ready to go because, you know, you've already kind of figured out what happens next.
Yeah, or you wake up at 3 in the morning and yes.
Yeah, I don't do that. So I'm
Oh,
a sound sleeper. I'm one of the
oh,
lucky ones.
you're lucky. What is your writing routine like? Like, how do you structure writing into your day?
I'm an early riser. I usually get up, whether I like it or not, around 5:30 or 6 because my cat comes in to get me. And we get up, I feed the cats, I water the plants and take out the trash, and pretty much then I'm ready to sit down and work and do whatever I need to do. Of course, sometimes there are interruptions and things go on. My youngest boy is staying with us today because he's getting ready to take off somewhere. So I might not write as much, but I will write. I guarantee I will at some point. I'll sit
Oh,
down and get some work done because that's just what I do.
do you write during the con?
I'm not going to work on a novel during the con, but I'll be doing other kinds of writing. You'll see me there, typing away. But there are always things to do at the convention. There are, you know, blasts. Everybody has the conference app, or should they can, which has the schedule and so much more. It makes it easier to communicate with people and make sure they don't forget things. And that's not really
Note to
exactly
self,
writing.
download app. I didn't know there was an app.
Yeah. Oh, you'll get an email next week inviting you into it. We only have 30 days on the app, so I have to wait until we're 30 days out before I can start inviting people in. But you'll
Okay.
get an invitation and you can start posting. And another nice thing about the app is that people can, they don't have to, but they can kind of look at all the choices and plan their day. Like I'm going to do that at 9:30 and I'm going to do that at 11. And I get all those totals so I can estimate, which is never a sure thing, but I can sort of guesstimate how many people are going to come to each session and maybe rearrange the rooms to make sure
Oh,
that the
right.
room is big enough for what I anticipate the crowd is going to be. That never happens perfectly either, but anyway, there's a lot going on at the con. I probably don't make much progress on my novels, though. You're right.
Oh, that's interesting. So I'm going to go back to the Superman Wars. What is the most
Mhm.
shocking thing, or what is like, what, give me a tease for
Mhm.
that book.
Well, do you know the story? I mean, Jerry Siegel was a kid. He was a teenager in Cleveland. But like me, this is probably why I can relate to his story so much. He knew he wanted to be a writer at an early age, and he was sending things out. He got published when he was a single digit age, for Pete's sake. And
Oh,
he was
wow.
placing letters, and he loved pulp magazines, as they were called at the time, and was getting published. He wrote for his school newspaper. And he really wanted a newspaper comic strip because at the time, during the Depression, that was the big deal. People made real money in that. Comic books didn't start till 35, and they were kind of considered the, scruffy second cousin that nobody really wanted. And Jerry spent years trying to bust into the newspaper syndicates. Uh, it's just the opposite of the world today when I think newspaper comic strips are kind of on the decline, but comic books and graphic novels are everywhere. That's multiple rows at Barnes and Noble. Anyway, Jerry spent several years trying to get the newspaper strip, and he couldn't. There were probably some reasons. Part of it was probably the fact that he and his partner were clearly Jewish, and part of it was probably
Oh,
also that this was such a brand new idea. You know, people would look at this and say, a guy's holding a car over his head, sure. Next. And, you know, they couldn't wrap their heads around it. But they had done some work with a comic book company. The comics were basically founded by a man named Major Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, who had been a former military officer and was a writer. And he was very good to his writers. You know, he took care of them. They didn't always make a fortune, but to him, he just acquired North American first serial rights. In other words, he published it right first, and then you got the rights back. And he was aware that like newspaper syndicates were looking at the comics, and if they saw something they liked, they might give you a call. So that sounded really good to Jerry. And in 37, he finally agrees to let the major do Superman. Unfortunately, the major loses control of the company just a heartbeat
Oh,
before Superman debuts. A man named Harry Donenfeld, with major mob connections, aided by his business partner Jack Leibowitz, acquire the company by dubious means. And that's all detailed in the book. I won't go through all
wow.
the stuff, but so this guy, he is a rum runner during Prohibition. He was best friends with Frank Costello, a major mob figure. He'd been indicted twice for pornography and just barely escaped, you know, punishment. The main reason he wanted to acquire this comic book company was that he thought this was something safe he could do with his publishing organization, something that wouldn't get him thrown in Sing Sing.
Wow.
And he had no idea that literally a year out from acquiring the company, he was a millionaire on Superman money because Superman came out in April of 38, was an immediate sensation, just like Jerry had been telling people it would be. But who's getting rich? It's not Jerry and his artist pal Joe. Now, to be fair, they did get some money up front, and during the Depression, you know, is good money, but it didn't last, and it wasn't a fraction of what the suits were getting because late in 35, just after Harry and Jack, did I say 35? I meant 37. After these guys took over, Jack sends them a release like Jerry had never seen before. You sometimes hear that they sold Superman for $130. Not entirely correct. They got $130 for the first story, which was 13 pages, and they got $10 a page. That's where the 130 came from. But that letter agreement also contained a clause that said, and you know, by the way, all the rights to the characters and everything in this story now belong to the company. And Jerry signed it, something he would regret for the rest of his life. I don't think he fully understood what he was doing, frankly. I mean, yes, he was anxious to see it published, but bear in mind, Jerry had lost his father when he was 17. Joe's father was the elevator operator at a hospital. They didn't have an agent, they didn't have a lawyer, they didn't have anybody. This is why at WriterCon I say meet people, because they didn't have anybody, and he made a mistake. And he almost immediately knew he'd made a mistake when he could see Superman everywhere, but he wasn't getting the millions. Harry was, and Harry was trying to, you know, get in the spotlight, calling himself Mr. Superman and wearing Superman t-shirts. And on Superman Day at the World's Fair, he shows up riding an elephant and not Jerry. And you can see that just kind of made Jerry crazy.
It would.
And
That
it
would
really,
ruin you.
yeah, it was devastating, but it gets worse. Sorry.
But
In
wait, there's more? Yeah.
43, he's drafted for World War II. He spends over 2 years overseas serving his country and comes back to find out not only have these guys taken over Superman, lock, stock, and barrel, they've taken another idea of his, Superboy,
Mhm.
not entirely new. It's Superman when he was younger, but Jerry was trying to create something new that he could own and not mess it up this time, which is why Jack Leibowitz always said no to it over and over again. And then while Jerry's overseas and can't do anything about it, they run Superboy anyway. They haven't bought it. They have no legal right to this whatsoever, but they've got a copy of the script, so they run with it, and it's a hit, and that becomes a series. So Jerry comes home to find these guys are now getting rich over two series that he created, And he hasn't even been paid $1 for Superboy. And that's really the breaking point for him. He tries to work it out, but he can't. So in 47, he becomes the first American writer to sue his publisher. And it doesn't go well for him. He does get some money on Superboy, but he does not get back the rights to Superman. And worse, they fire him from his own character. And if anything could be worse than that, it's this. They remove Jerry and Joe's names from the strip. You know, before that, Superman, whoever did it, it said Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Not anymore. They were erased. Even when they would reprint old stories that had appeared before, they'd color over the names. I mean, what's the point of that? That just seems spiteful to me. And
It is, I think
we
so.
we could argue about the legalities all night long, and it's in the book, but taking an artist's name off the work, that is just morally and ethically wrong.
Oh, it's
And
reprehensible. Horrible.
that's what launches this big creator rights battle, which, I got to say, Jerry thought the whole creative community would rise up and support it. They did not. In fact, in many cases, they did the exact opposite, which is why, but Jerry just keeps fighting. And when Jerry passes, his family continues the fight and create a lot of legal precedents that have benefited people ever since. So that's what the book's about.
That's incredible. That
Yeah.
is
And
incredible.
that's why I wanted to write it, because I think it's about writers. It's about all artists. It's a cautionary tale. Whether you're a writer, an artist, or you're creating original content for the internet like we're doing right now,
That's
you've
right.
got to protect yourself.
It's so important. And yes,
Yeah.
definitely I have to step up my game in that realm. Well, thank you very much for this. Let everybody know where they can find you and learn
Well,
more
you
about
can,
you.
you can get the book anywhere, I think. I know it's at Amazon because, like every other author, I obsessively, reload the page to see if my ranking's gone up half a step or whatever. And I hope it's in bookstores, but I can't guarantee what one store is gonna order and what they're not. My website is imaginatively titled williambernhardt.com, and you can find out about me too. There's a Facebook page. There's a free Substack newspaper, I might add, not only a William Bernhardt newsletter, but a WriterCon newsletter, which is completely free. So go log on and join and listen to our podcast, which is called WriterCon and has lots of great stuff for writers. And what am I missing? Oh, there's a Facebook group too. So if you
All
want the
right.
latest and greatest, what's happened in the last 24 hours, that's where you should go.
I will link to everything in the show notes.
Fantastic.
And it'll be out on Substack as well. So I'll hit the co-author. Well, thank you very much for your
Great.
time today.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to seeing you at WriterCon.
I'm looking forward to going.